welcome back. We've got a very special month ahead for you because all the ladies of Ask are here, and very special welcome to Mandy Ray of Ecstatic Astrology who's joining us. So it's very exciting to have all the four ladies of Ask reunited. We've got Krista from Practical Astros, Shauna from Smart Astro, Janessa from By Jove Astrology, and a huge welcome to Mandy Ray of Ecstatic Astrology, who's going to be joining us. And you can find all of us and our work through Asterai Sophia Kairos, through the YouTube channel. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, so you can find us all there, and our details will all be in the show notes. And if you want to take a screenshot of our November Astro Weekly update, you've got all of our websites there. But we won't be introducing ourselves individually because we want to get straight to the astrology. We're too excited.
And there's too much.
Yeah, there's too much to go through, and we want to get on with it. So here is our month ahead. We're going to be taking you through, and each of us is going to be introducing a different week. And yours truly, Sonia from Celestia Astrology, I'm taking you away with the first week from the 27th of November to the 4th of December. And we covered the 27th, the Sun is trining Mars, and we reviewed that last week when I spoke with Shauna. So looking from the first, we've got the new moon in Sagittarius. And I won't list all of these, but what I'm finding exciting, Venus is making a lot of aspects to the outers this month. We've got a Mercury Cazimi as Mercury retrogrades. It's going to be opposing Jupiter. We've got Mars going into retrograde, so it's really a month to slow down, although it's a busy party season. You've got Thanksgiving in the US, and then we go into Christmas. But the planets are telling us to slow down. So maybe that's a reflection that work takes a back seat and socializing steps up. I don't know. We'll have to see. But we've also got Venus entering Aquarius and conjuncting Pluto. So she's the first planet to meet the new Aquarian Pluto in its permanent home for the next 20 years. So that's also exciting. Neptune will station direct. And also interesting, this month we've got 3 lunations. In the month of December, we've got a new moon in Sagittarius, a full moon in Gemini, and a new moon in Capricorn. And each of us will be taking you through all of those. What do we all think about this? Is there anything that I've missed there that any of you are excited or looking forward to?
Kazemi, every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially
that crazy full moon in Gemini. I won't lie.
Yeah. That's a big one, especially with like Jupiter and Mercury being in mutual reception. It's like, that's quite a nice way that they're supporting, and it's like all the data, but the Cazimi and the Sun joining it, it's like a really nice feeling of what's that going to bring through.
Yeah, and just the fact that Mercury stations direct on that same day too, just like that whole mess just seems like it will be, full moon Gemini, just on paper, screams party. And for better or worse, but then having Mercury on that same day also just be like, okay, we had our fun lemma, let's go forward with all this stuff that we've been collecting after that Cazimi the week and a half before. I don't know, I was a little cautious about that one before, but the more I've looked at that, kind of the hours surrounding that whole day, it's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. We have no choice, so let's just go.
I think I'm excited about Mercury retrograde, maybe for that reason. It's probably an unpopular opinion, but it's kind of like, everything's strange anyway. Just dial it up. Just go ahead. Get into it. Be crazy. It's fine.
Yeah, and I saw, Mandy, you've released a whole episode on the Mercury retrograde.
Not yet, but I have put my graphic out though. No, I definitely, so I used to do this a lot and then I quit. And I think maybe that's why I'm excited about this, because it feels like a shift towards things I used to be excited about.
Bring in the joy.
There's that revisit keyword, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to the things that we love. So this is our lovely month ahead overview in like a graphic form from astroseek.com. And we're going to take you away looking at each of the planets. And it doesn't include the moon because the moon will travel all the way around. And the Sun is in Sagittarius and will be moving to Capricorn in this time.
Kind of like the whole Mercury and Sag deal. I have Mercury and Sag. So I think with the whole of the transit, the fact that it's opposing Jupiter in its home sign, to me is just really, I don't know, it's exciting. Oppositions especially with Jupiter, it can just make everything bigger and louder. And I tend to like that. So I'm just looking forward to it. Kazimi's great. December 5th, 6th, depending. It's kind of overnight, depending on where you are. Opposite Jupiter. I mean, how much more fun can you get? I don't know.
Saturn can make it not more fun.
We're ignoring Saturn. Saturn's answering to Jupiter anyway. Yeah, I'm totally ignoring Saturn.
Yeah. And who's going to feel this the most, do you think?
Well, maybe Pisces moons like me. So it is squaring Saturn. That should be noted. I can't ignore it. For the general public, that would be unfair. But if you choose to ignore Saturn, that's fine too. Saturn is direct though. So I think we might not be able to. So some delays, yes, but Mercury's already delayed. It's like kind of like party while you're delayed. Why not? It's like being in the airport in Aruba or something. Like, well, I'm here. I'm stuck, but
it reminded me, I saw this, it was years ago, where these people were like, had this long layover, and then all the people that were waiting in their terminal, like just made this like dance routine, and they all just practiced it because they were there for hours. And then they did the dance routine, and then they finally got on their flight, and then they left. But yeah, they made the best of kind of like a really dumb, annoying situation.
Yes, and that could possibly be the case with this transit. So I will relinquish that to the next planet.
Okay, well, we're looking at Venus now. And Venus is going to be traveling through from Capricorn, cardinal Capricorn, that initiates through to fixed Aquarius, where she'll be opposing Mars in Leo. And she'll also be meeting with Pluto in Aquarius, the newborn, I like to think of him, because Pluto's going to be in those early degrees in Mercury's bound. Looking at Mercury kind of things, Mercury's going to be resourcing. So that Mercury that's not moving, that Mandy's just taken us through, is going to be informing Pluto and Capricorn now. And Venus is going to be adding her beauty and her charm to whatever Pluto's going to be up to. And Venus is going to be meeting some of these outers while she travels through this stage, I feel. So this is going to affect the cardinal people. We've got Aries, Cancer, Libra,
Capricorn.
Thank you. Every time.
It's like trying to name all 7 dwarfs. I can get like 6 of them.
It just, like the brain just stops. It's like as though there's only 3. And also earthy people, I suppose, in the Earth triplicity, which would be Taurus then and Virgo, may also have had the benefit of Venus being in an Earth sign in triplicity support. And then she moves into an air sign, and the air triplicity will be Gemini, so the Jupiter and Gemini people, and Libra, where the nodes are, where the eclipses are finishing up their route. But also the 4 fixed signs, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio,
And
Leo. I will get there. It's slow.
There's a nice kite that forms with the nodes and Mars and Venus and Pluto on in the month, and I just love that.
Oh, that's really nice. What would a kite?
A kite formation, it's generally positive because it allows you, everything's flowing together, but it allows you a way out. So, somehow trines can be a little too much. You can get stuck in a trine almost. They're all floating together. This involves a sextile as well. And so it looks like a kite, and the sextile point is the point that is supposed to be the best. But it's Venus, I think. Anyway, we'll get to it.
is she like in the receiving end? Like she's channeling all that supportive energy through her. I do think it's nice because someone on Blue Sky was talking about how every malefic sign is followed by a benefic, Mars,
Yes.
Aries, followed by Taurus, followed by Venus, except for Capricorn, runs into just more Capricorn. And so for Venus having, gone through Capricorn just to get into another Saturnine sign, she like going into that trine with Jupiter, I think is really sweet. I don't know. It feels like Venus might have an easier time. She's pretty fast because she doesn't go retrograde until Pisces anyway. So despite, going through the entire winter, like she usually does through those Saturnine signs, she kind of gets some fun little party break.
Yeah, it's like that really nice party dress that you've got. You've got to go out in the cold, but then you come to the party and you're really proud of your party dress. You've got a new winter party dress. And that's your Venus and Saturn.
That kite has south node at the tip. which is interesting. It answers to Venus, though, which is with Pluto. So it's Mercury retrograde involved as well. It's Mars trine Mercury retrograde. There's Venus in Aquarius, the North Node in Aries. It's going to be pretty cool, I think.
That sounds fun. Okay, and then we go on to Mars.
Well, Mars is in Leo. So it traveled through Cancer and it's slowing down. It'll go retrograde on the 6th and go back towards Cancer, but it won't reach its fallen sign until January. The big thing with Mars is that it's going to be, while Venus will conjoin Pluto and have like a nice little, okay, Pluto, here's the Aquarius house. This is how you should treat it. This is how the things that it likes, behave. Mars is going to just bust through the door and be confrontational. And that'll happen on January 1st. So at the very end of what we're going to talk about, we'll peek into the 1st. But as Mars goes retrograde, it's going to be applying to that opposition. And so we'll feel more and more that pressure between the fixed houses. We talked about Mercury retrograde and Saturn and Pisces kind of engaging in opposition to Gemini, Jupiter. Mutable oppositions and squares, there's a sense of like, this won't last very long. Fixed oppositions and squares can have that sense of like, when is this going to end? So it just feels, because the nature of those signs is to sustain the light, so they kind of hold on to their arguments a lot longer. And so that opposition between Mars and Pluto, it's going to be good work because it'll be hopefully long-lasting work in the right direction. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it will be easy. Oppositions are the nature of Saturn. Pluto is in Saturn's sign. Mars is retrograde. He's kind of being drugged backwards, out of the bar so that it doesn't get into a fight by its Cancer bestie. I mean, it's that tension will be building slowly and slowly through the entire month of December and will really come to a head on January 1st. And then again, after it retrogrades through Cancer and then goes forward again back to Leo, but that'll be spring. So Mars will be a little bit more empowered. I just feel like that tension between the two is really going to be tense for all the fixed angles. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. But if any of your other planets kind of get caught up in those early degrees of a fixed sign, you're gonna feel it. If it touches your chart at all, you'll feel it, whether it's opposition or square. That's really kind of the biggest story for me is that Mars is a little happier in Leo, but it is not necessarily happy when it's retrograde because it likes to do things. It's not really famous for redoing things, It might just be a redoing of things that you broke the first time, have to go back and really address and remedy. But there's really functional ways that you can kind of channel the energy of Mars. Austin Coppock says, like, give Mars something to do. So there's ways to keep it busy, but I think that things will be classically revealed with that opposition to Pluto because that's what Pluto teaches. So look forward to that sunny news later in the month.
It's like, Happy New Year.
Powers for everybody. You get a tower and you get a tower.
I totally just heard that as powers for everybody. So I'm going to go with that instead.
Like powers whiskey.
You all could do with power. Yeah. And then we move to Jupiter.
Oh boy. Well, Jupiter's, sitting in detriment opposite its ruler, who's also in detriment. We've got a really cute little T-square happening, right, with Saturn. So lots and lots of tension sitting there. Jupiter's not going to move too far in the next month. He takes a full year to get through one sign. So it's trudging along and long lasting. It's definitely going to take its time there. That opposition to Mercury has just been interesting and funny and kind of eye-opening in a way. And now we've got Mercury retrograde to topple on top of that. Do you guys have anything to add for Jupiter and Gemini?
I've kind of enjoyed the transit, even though it's in a dark house for me. It's like a planet in detriment isn't always that easy, but Jupiter and Gemini has been not totally unpleasant. And then it's going to go into its exaltation when it goes into Cancer in the summer. So, I mean, famous last words, I'm not going to say it's been perfect, but it hasn't been as totally catastrophic as sometimes people like to fearmonger. So at least we have that.
I mean, there's definitely the tension there because of that square with Saturn, but I also have it in a dark house too. So it feels like just stocking ammo in a way until Jupiter can just burst through and flourish in Cancer.
Then we move on to Saturn.
Yes, so Saturn is still in Pisces, and it at least is moving forward now. So it turned direct in November. So that's been nice to get things kind of moving forward again as a Pisces rising. We do still have that square going to Jupiter. I like Saturn Jupiter configuration. I feel like they lend their tools well to each other to be able to do things, like to make things happen. The structure, Jupiter has like the big picture and like the energy and like the creative power, and then Saturn has like the structure and the limitations that actually help Jupiter to make things happen versus just having the big ideas. So I like that combo. It's also squaring the whole Sagittarius, the Mercury retrograde. So, I wonder if it's adding some stability there. It's kind of like tempering that whole Sagittarius Gemini axis, maybe like dampening the party a little bit, as Mandy was talking about, but maybe, that sober voice that we need sometimes to like chime in when things get a little bit crazy. I feel like that's a point we can look to in the chart for some stability, even though it's still in Pisces, it's still in like a very watery emotional sign. It's still Saturn and it's direct. Oh, it's mostly functional.
He's in the better position than Jupiter. He's in that superior position, and they did this. Saturn was retrograde, but Jupiter was direct in August when they first squared, and this time he's got kind of the upper hand in the situation. And the next time they square is after Saturn moves into its fall of Aries, and Jupiter is going to be in Cancer. So it's like right now is the best that Saturn's got it with this square. So if it feels bad from that, it's like, well, the power might be what little power Saturn has in Pisces at this moment over Jupiter is kind of short-lived. That kind of gives me hope, because Saturn squares are just notoriously not easy, and it perfects on Christmas Eve, of course. But I feel like it might just get a little easier after that square. Just get through Christmas.
I get the sense that the square is, I'm going to a Christmas party and expect a party, and instead we end up like praying the whole time or something. Like, it just feels like that's what Saturn wants, is a little more of that reverence for things. I think Jupiter is, just kind of losing its mind in Gemini. I like this stocking up on Amos thing, because that's really what it feels like. It's like a chill Jupiter, a little bit. So maybe expecting a party, but having to be reverent in some way.
I like that. Okay, so let's look at the week. So from the 27th of November to the 4th of December. And the transits that I've picked to look at is on the 1st, we've got the new moon in Sagittarius. And I'll also be looking at Venus trining Uranus, which happens on the following day. And Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter, which we've already talked about and touched on a little bit. And look at everything that's happening on the 4th. It's crazy. So mark the 4th in your diary, because there's a lot of astro going on then. We've got Mercury retrograde is opposing Jupiter. We've got the Sun squaring Saturn from Sagittarius to Pisces. And we've got Venus sextiling Neptune. So when I was talking about Venus touching all these outers, it feels like that's when, I don't know, she's bringing messages through or taking something beautiful to them. But it feels nice. She's trining Uranus. These are nice, easy aspects that she's making to them. So she's bringing something of ease. She's preparing to leave Capricorn in the late degrees. So are you ladies happy with what I've chosen to look at? The 1st, the 2nd and the 4th there? Or do you have any thoughts on those ones? Unfortunately, it's hard some weeks to choose which 3 to actually.
It's such a big day. Yeah, we should talk about
And the Sun trine Mars we looked at the 27th. We looked at that last week. So I'll go straight to the new moon. So this is the first of the 3 lunations that we're getting this month. So it's a busy month for the moon. And the decan that this moon falls in is ruled by Mercury and Jupiter, which I just love for the way that we're talking about this opposition between Mercury and Jupiter and the mutual reception that they've got going on at the moment. And we see this just here at 9 degrees in this first. And I feel like that brings some support through for this moon, because it has got this T-square that we've been talking about with Saturn. So the way that Saturn might be dampening the party, but there's this support coming in from Mercury, Jupiter at the same time. And I've got this Wild Way card here, which is really quite beautiful. The wolf travelling fast through the forest, carrying its bow and arrows, and the idea of magic motion. So there's something a little bit magical here, the way that he's moving through that forest and like really intent on his message, which is like a signification of Mercury Jupiter is taking that message. And Jupiter can be known as the mage, particularly in Sagittarius, which is where Mercury is. So it feels like Mercury as the messenger is carrying the mage's message. Here is how I see this wolf, like so intent on his mission with the mage's message. So the aspects that we've got.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Because something I noticed, it might have been when Mandy and I were talking before, but starting in November, the new moon in Scorpio is at 9 degrees and some change. And then December, the new moon is at 9 degrees. Sagittarius, some change. Capricorn, it's 9 degrees, some change. Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, all of them are at 9 degrees. The first new moon that changes degrees is the one in April. And for 6 months to have all of the new moons at the very end of that very first decan of each sign just got my attention. I mean, the moon has cycles, like surprise, but it just seemed odd because I looked back and it was like, it was 14 and then it was 12 and then it was 11 and it was 10 and then it was 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. And 9 is just such a magical number anyhow. It just got my attention. I don't know what it means, but I was like, there's some magic in that, you know, with the new moon especially. It's like, because it's dark, because it's secretive, I'm suspicious and I want to know more. Just sorry, pardon the interruption.
That's okay. No, that's fascinating because it means something, doesn't it? That's what we're trying to do, is to spot patterns and repetitions and symbols. And I love that. Yeah, I hadn't seen that myself, so that's a great catch. How exciting. We need to watch that degree then for everything.
I wonder if that has some sort of indication, since the nodes are closing in on changing signs.
Yeah, maybe like it slows it down somehow. Maybe it's not coincidental. I haven't looked back, you know, historically to see, or even to be forward. But yeah, that might make sense because it will really shift in March, right? And then April, the next month, it'll.
Yeah, the south node is at near Black Moon Lilith, and that is the slowest point of the moon, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder, something to research.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Jupiter here. We've got Jupiter as the bound ruler, as the joint decan ruler, and then as the triplicity ruler. So Jupiter is that mage bringing that energy through. And then in opposition in Gemini, where it's all about the data and the details, Gemini is curious about taking everything apart and wanting to find what all the component parts are about. And there's something there that Jupiter is exploring, like Jupiter wanting to go on that mission or a quest, like we see the wolf there in the picture. It just feels like there's something coming together there. New moons we see symbolically, like Krista said, they're dark. There's no light there. And the full moon is when everything's lit up and illuminated. The new moon is at its darkest point. It's like next to the sun in the sky, and it's symbolically a fresh start for us. But of course, we get one every month, so it's not a huge, profound fresh start. But it is in that area of our chart. So if you know where Sagittarius is in your chart, then that's where that fresh start would be. And you get one Sagittarius new moon a year. So it is symbolic in that sense, but you get a fresh start in each area of your chart for each of the 12 signs every month. Sorry, every year you get a fresh start. I'm getting myself in the muddle with that.
You just have to step up and do the work. You don't just get a get out of jail free card for that.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, Sonia, too, but that 9 degrees is right where Antares is located. I think that's interesting. I don't have much to say about it, but I think that's, one of the fixed stars that's pretty prominent. Be interesting.
Far into Sag, is it?
Yep. That's my MC.
Oh, wow, because Antares is like, it would have started in Scorpio, and then that's the progression where it's moved into Sagittarius, but it's the star that's of the nature of Mars that's very protective. So again, that's a royal fixed star.
And just to plug Sphere and Sundry's Antares oil, like,
yes,
enough that if you need to go after some badass job, just anoint yourself in that. I think you will have all the chutzpah to get that job if you anoint yourself. That oil is intense. And the candy that they send with it is a little scorpion inside of a little lollipop. So I
Yeah.
recommend that.
Yeah, I used it once when I needed some courage. I don't know that it was the oil, but the whole phone systems crashed for 24 hours. So I sense it might have been a little bit overdone, but yeah, the outcome was successful anyway. So yeah, I caught a lot of fixed stars with the others, but I didn't catch that one. So thank you, Janissa. So we have the keywords of revelation, swift movement, decisive action, and going viral. So it's very much about the movement with this. And we've got her presence with Mercury retrograde. And obviously the Mercury retrograde is asking us to redo, revise, revisit all the RE words. But also I find it's a good time to test things out, things that you're wanting to look at, and just like a project that you're starting or something, you can find the errors and the problems in it. If you tentatively soft launch something, it's a good time. So that would be a good way to work with the energy of this new moon. We've got a whole sign opposition with the ruler, Jupiter. We've got a whole sign sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. So again, this is like the first lunation that's making contact with that new Pluto. And it's nice that it's a sextile. It's a nice aspect for the first lunation of the Aquarian. So again, that message that Jupiter's carrying and the wolf is carrying so importantly. And it's like the way that horses, the messenger would travel on a horse carrying that important message. It's kind of got that image, isn't it, of that messenger. And maybe the message is from Pluto in Aquarius, something coming through about what the Pluto long stay is. And of course, that T-square with Saturn, that Saturn that's now newly direct, is bringing the opportunity to ground something into something stable, but also flexible, because it's Pisces and it's watery and slightly ethereal and dreamy. Got a trine to retrograde Mars in Leo, or it will be retrograde, it's not yet. Need to be careful with that. And it's not quite degree based, but nearly. So it's just a degree out from being a degree based trine. But it's also a fire sign, so it's got that triplicity sympathy going on. And Krista is our expert on this. Do I spot the Uranus, Mars, and Tisha that's separating?
Yeah, I was just looking that. I was looking at actually Venus to the new moon, but it's a couple of extra degrees. That would be Antisha. Leo, Taurus have a contra Antisha to each other, so that would be close. Yeah, so contra Antisha is kind of our like secret oppositions. But yeah, I really do like the sextile just by house of that Sagittarius. Like Sagittarius, of course, would be the bold one to just like initiate the conversation with Pluto and Aquarius. You're like, hey, dude, everybody says you're this weird alien creature. You know, what's going on? You know, how can we work together? The sextile is like that really hopeful. Like, can we make something together? Can we do something? It's like a really good, eager new friendship. And I like the new moon being kind of that gateway into having conversations with that fully Plutonian Aquarius house now, because Aquarius will be influenced by Pluto for the next 19, 20 years, just like Capricorn was. So I do really like that. I feel like the Sagittarius house versus the Gemini house is just like the duel that's going to kind of foreshadow everything else. So that contra Antisha might be harder to spot just because Sagittarius and Geminis are just loud houses. And the fact that they're in that mutually assured destruction of sharing each other's rulers, I feel like that's just going to be pretty loud. But I do really like that new moon talking to Pluto and also applying towards that Saturn a little bit, you know, is having a bit of the upper hand. That first decan of Sagittarius is the Eight of Wands, and it's just the Lord of Swiftness. So it's just like really just bold action. You know, Venus favors the bold. And so especially for Pisces risings that have Sagittarius as their 10th house, I think it's just a really fun chance to just be bold. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. Austin Cobbett calls it the poisoned arrow. So there's a slight warning there to check your horses, I suppose, before you leave. Check the message that you're carrying. But we've got that with that opposition as well, and the T-square to Saturn. You know, the astrology bears that out anyway, that there is that warning. Astrologer Kira Ryberg calls it mythic, and of course the Huawei Oracle deck calls it magic motion. And the write-up for the Sagittarius One Wolf says, no time to waste. He's enthusiastically whooshing by at top speed, arriving like bolts of lightning, visions and thoughts and ideas must be implemented immediately or not at all. And now is the time for action, like Krista said with the Eight of Wands as well. But thoughts can be easily manipulated through propaganda and persuasion. So ensure your feelings are as authentic as possible before drawing a bow and releasing your arrow. So it is a reminder to just check in with ourselves before we take that action, which the astrology is bearing out as well. Check in with Saturn, check in with those sort of darker thoughts or the obstacles and blocks that you're being presented with. The Mars that's slowing down and getting ready to station. There's something that's slowing us down. Mercury's retrograde. We're being slowed, and that's asking us to check in here.
I just had a thought on what Krista was saying with the all of the new moons in the first decans. And I just wonder, if that's kind of speaking to just a lot of, I mean, obviously in the state of the world, but a lot of like new and a lot of like big changes. And, it kind of maybe ties back to like this new era of like Pluto and Aquarius, but like thinking of the decans, if we think of the first decan, 3 in each sign, the first being like the cardinal point or like that seeding point. And, the new moon being a seed, typically when we talk about that process, that it's just kind of like planting these seeds that are like, it's like doubling down on the new moon energy or something that's already there. But again, just coming at the beginning and signs of bigger things, bigger changes to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 9 months is a gestation period. So the number 9 for me is very much fertile.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good.
Number 9. That's what I keep saying.
I love 9 and myth. The 9 days is how long Odin was on the Yggdrasil tree, and he gained wisdom during that time as well. So it feels very much like that. Like there's something to be had here in the next few months.
Yeah, and the 9 is the Hermit card in Tarot, and that's all about that internal dark Mercury having enough illumination to light your own.
And Mars going into Cancer. It just all kind of points to the same stuff.
I love all these threads put together. Okay, so on the 2nd,
We're just on the 2nd. That's just such a big move.
yeah, it's hard to adjust, isn't it, from that?
Who wants to talk about Uranus trying Venus while Sonya's gone?
Right? I mean, that's the whole thing. Unexpected.
Yeah, surprise.
Expected company.
Uranus doesn't really have much. It's not being touched as often as it was in the spring when all those things went through Taurus. So maybe this will be a welcome interaction.
I think so, especially with it in Venus's home sign. It's just such a kind of like they're giving the same feelings. Venus is really taking on Uranus in that way during that transit. Freedom. It feels like freedom, like the guy, what's his name? Well, Mel Gibson, when he screams freedom.
Braveheart.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So we got on the 2nd of December, and I've got it at 2:43 Universal Time, if you need to adjust it when it goes exact. But we've got Venus in Capricorn at 24 degrees. And she's the ruler of Uranus, so that's why it's interesting, making this trine. But their natures are so different in this respect, which is why it seems nice. Venus is there in Saturn's Capricorn, and again, their natures are opposite. Saturn being it's earthy, which is nice for Venus. She's at home in that earthy place. She's the triplicity ruler here in Saturn's Capricorn. But Saturn's very serious, and Venus wants to bring ease and party and joy and pleasure wherever she goes. So she's beautifying Capricorn there. Saturn wants to build something, and Venus wants to make it beautiful. If you think of an architect and those horrible concrete structures, but Venus would want to build a big Gothic temple or something. And then Uranus is the disruptor, the awakener, the erraticness that brings something unpredictable. And when they're in this trine aspect, it's the nature of Jupiter. So it's an aspect of ease that they're bringing together. So it's looking for ease, but we've got Uranus in Venus's sign. That's an earthy sign looking for pleasure and looking to explore the senses. I always think of this sign as like Venus's garden of pleasure, where every time you walk around the corner, there's something even more beautiful to explore. maybe it's a fountain, maybe it's a maze, maybe it's a rose garden or something, and your senses are just delighted at every turn. And I suppose in some way Uranus could do that by surprising you with unexpected things. But as I said before, she's connecting with all three of these outers at the moment. 2 are by degree, and she's within 6 degrees now from her conjunction with Pluto. We see them very close now, and she's getting closer and closer to that. So Venus is really connecting up those dots.
I like that trying to Uranus, but I like more the approaching sextile to Neptune, because Neptune's in her exaltation degree sign.
Yeah.
So it's like she's, the Uranus doesn't really plan things, right? It's just surprise, something's different, but they're in Earth signs, so maybe it will come in a tangible form. So maybe not trying to like plan something concrete, but just be open for whatever surprising earthly delights show themselves. But that sextile to Neptune, even though it'll get better as it perfects, I just feel like that also influences, because then you have Neptune and Uranus that been in sextile for a while, but having Venus come in, looking at our exaltation sign and home sign, it just feels very lovely.
I'm a big fan of using these to actually change something if you want to as well. If you're trying to change something, these transits are the best to utilize, I think. Good transits with Uranus, good ones.
Yeah. Yeah. She's sextiling her ruler Saturn, but no sign of her exalted ruler Mars. So Saturn's got some say over what she's doing at the moment. Mars hasn't. And again, we've got that antitia between Uranus and Mars as well. So she's brought into whatever's going on in secret between Uranus and Mars that we discussed with the new moon. Venus is now coming into that mix. And I've got some dates. I always have some dates to look at. She will square Uranus at the end of the month when she moves into Aquarius. She'll sextile Neptune. That will go exact on the 4th of December. She will oppose on, that must be...
She'll oppose Mars after she goes into Aquarius.
Yeah, she'll oppose Mars once she's past Pluto. The opposition with Uranus on 14th of October was from Scorpio. The last conjunction was in Taurus on the 18th of May in 24, and the next conjunction will be on the 4th of July at 29 Taurus. I think I've said before, the reason I give these dates is because if something significant happened for you around those dates, or if Taurus is significant in your chart, then it's worth tracking those dates out and following their cycle just to see, like, this trine brings ease, but the square can bring readjustments once she moves into Aquarius. And we move towards the square, you might be forewarned then that adjustments might be necessary.
Especially if Venus is your Time Lord of the year, and you're going to feel those Venus aspects loudest, even if it doesn't exactly hit your chart. Whatever's going on with her kind of determines what state she's in to be able to be a good Time Lord or be one that's overburdened. But especially if it does hit something in your, if you have late degree fixed, points in your chart, you'll probably feel it doubly if Venus is your queen of the year.
Yeah. Or Saturn for that matter. I suppose as she's traveling through the Saturn signs and connecting with the outers.
It's moving very fast too right now.
So 4th of December, we have all this astrology going on. We've got the Sun squaring Saturn, we've got Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter, and the Venus sextile Neptune goes exact. And that's the second outer contact for Venus in 2 days. And she's also getting even closer now within a degree engagement to Pluto, although it's out of sign. So we'll start with the Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter, which we have touched on already. This is from Sagittarius to Gemini. And we could say this is about broadening and expanding the mind, that both of them Sagittarius wants to expand and go on a mission, and Gemini wants to be curious and take things apart and understand how they work. And it's really quite positive and optimistic, even though it's an opposition. So there's a tension there, something that needs to be resolved or balanced. It can be good for planning and negotiation and contracts, buying and selling, although I wouldn't recommend it because, of course, Mercury is retrograde. So maybe the planning part, especially if you're revisiting something you've done before, like Mandy said about her going back to something she loved before and redoing it. That's the kind of thing you want to be planning, is things that you're going back to. Or if you're looking at contracts, like really going into the fine print, really going deep into what you're looking at. And the shadow side can be a tendency to optimism or boasting or exaggeration. That's kind of like the Jupiterian nature, to look at that big picture and maybe be overconfident in what they see. You've got a Jupiter that's angular, and I can be over optimistic, and then my dad's got a Saturn that's angular and he can be overly negative, and the two of us are sort of chalk and cheese with that thing, where we have a discussion and Dad's pointing out all the problems. Yeah, but what if? And sort of the archetype. Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I'm so sure it's all going to go right, and he's so sure it's all going to go wrong. I've got the archetype is like, we were talking about Tolkien this week, weren't we? We both watched some, and we were talking about those epic long poems and books and those epic programs as well that you really get engrossed in, and that like are so long, but the story is so fascinating. And that's kind of like the archetype, that Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or something that really has that little bit of magic as well to it. And that's how I see that archetype, of that opposition.
It really just speaks to just the mutable angles, because the mutable angles are ruled by Jupiter or Mercury, and Jupiter and Mercury are opposing each other. So not only is it just, angular to the Pisces and the Virgo houses, it's their rulers. Their rulers are involved. And I do kind of like that it almost feels like, so Mercury is in their own bounds. So he's operating by his own rules within his exiled placement, going into the sun, being retrograde. So in a way, it almost feels like it hints to whatever the Cazimi might be, depending on what house Sagittarius is for you. So while there is that Saturn square, I'm just maybe ignoring Saturn too, or just looking at like, well, Mercury, yes, he's retrograde, he's slow, and he's exiled, but he's within 3.5 degrees of the sun. Moving into the sun is moving into him, and he's within his own bounds. So he's got his own tool belt on, at least. And Jupiter's in Venus's, I think, is what it looks like. I don't think he's in Mars's yet. I think he's in Venus. So that's a little helpful. I don't know. I kind of like this almost as like a precursor to the inferior conjunction that's about to happen with Mercury and Sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's always some support there, isn't there? There's always something that you can look to, and that's the beauty of astrology. Really, is it finds your way out through the more challenging times when there is the difficulty there, and it's what you can do with it, how you can work with it.
Yeah, they force you to move forward, squares do. And I'm looking at the T-square when I'm thinking about that, because Saturn square the sun there. And then really by sign, it's all, the T-square is there with Jupiter, Mercury, the sun. It's there for a while. There's just, that holds. And so to think about using this time as a time to dream, to be able to move forward soon. But right now it's like, I'm just building up the ideas, and it's okay to delay. I'll put that on a shirt. It's okay to delay. It's fine.
Yeah. And that's like the astrology is validating that for us, isn't it? That
yes,
we're supposed to be, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I love that, Mandy. I think a narrative that's just coming through right now is like, and I don't know if I've even like seen the whole movie, but Freaky Friday, where like the mom and the teenage daughter like switch places, and like it's Uranus, like it's completely unexpected, but like just the chart rulers being in the flipped signs, and like Saturn being in Jupiter's sign during all of this. It's like they're gaining this understanding and like walking in each other's shoes, and by the end of the movie, I'm sure it just ends all happy, where they have a newfound understanding for each other. But yeah, I don't know, just popped into my
I'm thinking of Saturn and Jupiter as like characters, and like at the end, they're just skipping away or something. It all works out. It does.
Well, the sun is like, yo, I'm in a square with Saturn still. Yeah, because that's not easy. I was like, yeah, Kazemi's nice, but then Sun square Saturn is just hard, and archetypally it can be just like challenges with what we deem as authority in our own lives, what we give agency to, just power struggles. Sun and Sagittarius is, and I think of Sagittarius, I think of that just authentic, no fucks fire. It's kind of like, this is me. And that can be challenging to, anybody, but Saturn is like, well, I don't care. Here's the limitation. So just that tension, I think can be pretty difficult. So it may not, there's a lot going on. And to me, that might be that might underwrite all of the tension. Maybe even more so than the Jupiter Mercury opposition. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I was like,
No, I agree. And I think
just hard.
it is. It's heavy. And Pisces, that's the only thing that gets me. And it feels like existential heaviness. Like it's almost like something we can't name. And I think with Virgo being missing here in the big picture, nothing's in Virgo. So, I mean, it sends me into Virgo, I think, is where that would be a good place to kind of focus on if you're having any trouble, is what can I do with my current reality right now? Can I get rid of clothes? Can I plant some seeds? I mean, it's winter for a lot of us, but, things like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's interesting to see when there's a lot of astrology that's heavy on one day, like how they all interact and play out together. This is what I haven't had much experience of tracking yet. I've got some dates for the Mercury Jupiter. We're met in conjunction on the 4th of June 2024 in the early Gemini, and their next conjunction will be the 8th of June 2025, and that will be at the end of Gemini. That's going to be the anaretic degree, 29 degrees. And I think as we move through the month, that's going to come up as well. So where we've been talking about 9 degrees, we're going to see some more of the 29 degrees as well.
Great.
For like the next conjunction's coming, because I clocked that. And then talking about the sun squaring Saturn, I came up with some of the same words that you guys have been using. And I was also thinking about the archetype, and I was thinking about like the patriarch and matriarch, and also like TV shows like Succession. I don't know if you watched that, but where that guy was just manipulating his family to the point where they were like destroying each other's, the siblings, where they were fighting against each other, and the business ultimately suffered, and the father ultimately suffered. Everybody did, really. It's hard to see. It was not a spoiler, but it was the in-law, wasn't it? The son-in-law who ultimately benefited and came out the winner. Yeah, they all suffered.
No, there was no redeeming character. As much as I wanted one to be redeeming.
Yeah,
them are redeemed.
There really wasn't. But you could see how it sort of came from top down, and it's like, that's.
What a great example for this T-squared, because there's the humor that was involved in that show. I mean, it was hilarious, but so depressing.
Yeah, and it was so you couldn't not watch it and find out what happened next. It was like, what will they do? How will they resolve this? And then it just went from one disaster to the next. It was like, oh my goodness.
It's like being obsessed with a slow, like, car crash.
Sure.
I cannot wait to find out how I'm going to be so mad at these characters.
Yeah. And will they redeem themselves? Will they do the right thing? No.
So Sonia, you heard it here. Sonia saying we'll all have our own personal episodes of Succession in our lives.
No, please don't. Please redeem yourself. If you
Yeah, be the redemptive character in this situation.
Yeah. So some dates for that. This is the closing square, which I suppose is something. This is where the opportunity for redemption comes in, I suppose. After all has been revealed at the full moon point, we get the closing square. And the conjunctions, their first conjunction was on the 28th of February in the first decan of Pisces. So again, that first decan coming out. And the next conjunction will be the 12th of March, and that will be in the last decan of Pisces. And the last aspect of that day is the Venus sextile Neptune, which we've already touched on. And this is nice and sweet and sensitive and gentle and graceful and spiritual. So maybe this is where the redemption comes in. This is where there is something sweet and possible to soften everything that we've talked about. I mean, there is the potential for the rose-tinted glasses with this. There's a vulnerability and a potential for codependence or romantic illusions or confusions or deceptions. So lean into what you're hearing from people around you maybe and touch some grass.
Or just read Tolkien, and get lost in it, because it's not going to last that long. Venus is going to move pretty quickly. So maybe some rose-tinted glasses just to take a break from the sun square Saturn reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sean and I have talked about this aspect before, and how it leads into like the Romeo and Juliet, the balcony moment. That we've got an ad on at the moment. I keep hearing it. It's like, I want that snowfall kind of love. And like, there's a girl with a snow globe, and she's turning the snow globe, and it's like, oh yeah, we all want that snowfall kind of love, don't we? But it doesn't last, because the snow drops and then it dissolves. But it's very beautiful while it lasts. And like you say, Venus moves fast. It won't last, but the opportunity for redemption does. So yeah, if that opportunity presents, do take it, because that's the sweet side of whatever's happening that day. So the dates for these two, this is also a closing aspect. So there's a feeling of everything getting closed up at the moment, everything getting sorted out and swept up and finalized. They met in conjunction on the 3rd of April, 24, and that was at the end of Pisces as well. And their next conjunction will be the 1st of February, 2025. At 27 Pisces. So that's interesting. They met at the 28th degree of Pisces this year in 24, and the next conjunction is going to be at 27 Pisces. So it's gone back a degree because of the retrogrades. So it's interesting that something's setting back, that we're maybe re-going over old ground from this year and whatever's being started with their conjunction. So that's what I've got for them. Was there any thoughts on how the three will out together?
We get to find out. It's the first Mercury day since Mercury's been retrograde in Sagittarius, which is retrograde for the longest in Sagittarius this year than all the other signs. But yeah, this is going to be like just wait and see, because there's so much going on. I think it's going to be hard to extract one over the other. Have mercy on us all.
Yes. Good luck, everybody. And please let us know in the comments how it goes for you, or if you've got any questions. That closes out our week. Please do, if you've enjoyed this, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We're trying to grow the Ask YouTube channel, and you'll find us on Instagram, Asteroid Severe Kairos, and on Twitter, that place, the X place. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. I do astrology readings and also offer astro mindfulness, and you'll find me on Substack as well. And if you want to take a screenshot to contact any of the other ladies, we have Shauna Smart Astro, Krista from Practical Astros, Janessa from Bydrove Astrology. We're welcoming Mandy Ray from Ecstatic Astrology, and we are the ladies of Asteroid Sophia Kairos. So thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week covering the 4th to the 11th of December. So thank you so much for joining us.